Hey folks, welcome to Good Story Live. It is Thursday, September 1st. I know where it is, Ginger. I got it right this time.
I was paying attention.
Of 2022. We're thrilled to have you join us. We have a great program coming up. In this new month, I can't believe it's September already.
I
Ginger,
know.
Are your kids back in school now, or is that...
Oh yeah, my last one starts school next week.
Oh my goodness,
yeah,
so many things going on. Well, let's talk about the exciting guest we have. We've been having a lot of authors recently on the program. We're pivoting a little bit in concept to an audiobook reader, someone who reads and brings to life these wonderful stories. Laura Horowitz is our guest today. Laura, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. I'm so happy to be here.
We're thrilled to have you. We got a lot of questions for you about what it's like to be an audiobook narrator and how you bring these characters to life having just one voice, or maybe it's many voices. I don't know. Right. We'll find out.
Can't wait.
Stay tuned. We'll be back with you in a couple minutes, all right? All right, what do you say, Ginger? Should we get the show on the road?
Let's do it.
All right, folks, let's do it. You're watching Good Story Live. Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is Good Story Live on this Thursday, September 1st of 2022, joined by the wonderful Ginger Crosby. Ginger, it's always so nice when you can carve out some time to be on the
chat
show.
With you. Yeah. To chat with you.
Chat with
always.
me.
Always.
Across the airwaves.
I don't know if I've told you this, but you are now a pinned conversation thread in my
Wow.
I know.
I've been pinned, ladies and gentlemen.
You've been pinned. You are one of the people that I talk to most frequently, and you are now pinned, so you don't disappear from my line of sight. I never lose you.
Last time you sent or it wasn't the Loom video of just one of the projects you were working on, you wanted to show me. I saw on the side the different photos that you have from the Apple messages, the iMessage, how it's just stacked on top of each other. And I saw the one that you chose for me, which is the one we have on our website, where I'm kind of looking back and look real cool. And I'm like, wow, every time I send you a text, I just look really cool doing it, even if it's just like, hey, what time are we recording something?
That is the image that is always there, even on my phone. It's like right there. There's Jesse.
Cool Jesse texting Ginger. How are you, Ginger?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm good. Been very busy. Very, very busy. End of month, and August was very busy for me. And now here we are in September.
I know.
There is no stopping it. The wheel of time continues to turn.
It does. School, it's back and forth. My youngest starts next week.
Wow.
Well, technically the following week, because we're going to be out of town. We're going to go to, we're going to the beach for
the beach.
Yeah. So she'll start the following week. But this made me think, it's September. Alex Wilson on the show back in the end of June. Alex
Wilson, yes, your sister.
Yes. My sister.
Yes.
She posted an update because she's been traveling. They have been.
So remind our viewers what happened with her.
Yes. So my sister, for those of you that don't remember, if you didn't see her episode, I will link it in the description if you're interested in checking it out. Her and my brother-in-law were living in Florida. They decided, you know what? We're going to capitalize on the booming housing market for sellers, and we're going to sell our home, or see if we can sell our home. We're just going to see. And lo and behold, they got more than they thought that they would ever get. My brother-in-law quit his job. My sister is still freelancing, and they are traveling across the United States in their Jeep Gladiator and pull-behind camper with their 2 dogs. And they have now officially been on the road for 43 days now today, because it's September 1st.
That's a long time.
Yes, traveled 6,746 miles.
My goodness.
If you go to her Instagram, Energetically Guided, I will also link that. You can see she posted a little map of where they've been and where they've been going. And the national parks that they've been visiting, the pictures they've been taking have been phenomenal.
It's amazing to see all the different parks that they've hit. I mean, that has been very intentional.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And, this is only the first half of their trip. And I think she's going to have some exciting updates coming over the next couple of months too, as they move forward in this. I'm interested to see where they land.
Is there a rhyme or reason to where they decide to go next? Is it based on weather or events, or do they just kind of let the road guide them?
I think they kind of let the road, like, they know they have an end point. And I think based off of what I'm seeing now on the map, I feel like they took a turn to go north, and then they're going to head towards. So originally, I thought they were going to go straight across and cut up California to go to Washington, because Washington is their last stop. Yes, Washington State, thank you, is their last stop across country. And then they'll start making their way back. But they did not do that. They went up through Idaho and Montana, and then are going to cut over to Washington. So, I don't know.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm so glad that they did this.
I've driven cross country before. I drove from Florida to Seattle, and from Fort Lauderdale, Florida to Seattle over it was like a couple of weeks. So, I stopped and saw friends along the way, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But I think everyone should drive cross country once in their life. It is a tremendous experience. It gives you a context and an idea of how big, but more importantly, how small the United States actually is. It depending on how you view it. I leaned more on the small side. I was like, wow, that we reached certain mile points faster than I was anticipating, and you get an idea of terrain changes and things like that. You find out that Kansas is actually quite beautiful. It's actually a pretty state to drive through. Yeah. Huh. I think everyone should try it.
I would be interested in especially having kids. I've never done that. We never did that as growing up. We would do driving trips, and we'd go up to like North Carolina. I think once, maybe twice, we drove up to Massachusetts, but it was never like a scenic trip. It was, we're hitting a destination.
Got it.
So I would be very interested in doing this. And it's been so, again, like I said, funny watching them. They hit these national parks and these beautiful places. And each time they say, oh, this is our new favorite spot. Oh, wait, no, this is our new favorite spot. And you can just see like the overwhelming joy and excitement that they have throughout this process.
That's awesome.
I know.
And they don't like just stop and see the highlight. Like I saw they've gone on hikes. They've gone deep into some of the parks and some of the areas. I think they're trying to cover every square foot of the United States, during their time. But
and my brother-in-law, I'm 99% certain that his degree is in environmental studies. So he loves the outdoors. He loves everything, nature. And so he is truly in his element, like going into these parks and just being able to observe and photograph and just kind of soak it all in. It's so cool. He's gotten some awesome pictures. Like I said, if you have not headed over to their Instagram profile or been following them on YouTube, check it out to see their update and what they've been up to, because it's pretty cool.
And go back and watch the interview if you didn't see it. Ginger interviewed her sister. I was not there that day, unfortunately. I was recovering from pneumonia, but cough. But it was, it's fine. Ginger did a great job soloing the show. Looking forward to having Alex back on at some point for a progress update. So.
For sure. Once they figure out where they're going to land. Because I imagine service on the road, it's going to be a little touch and go. It might be
Starbucks coffee shops, which that service can be touchy too. So
it can. Also the commotion,
All the commotion. That's right.
Mhm.
When they head up to Wisconsin, which I'm sure they will at some point, Milwaukee,
Mhm.
Wisconsin, have them let me know, and I'll show them around.
Yes, stop and see you.
But see it in the summer. Summer there's more to see. It's easier, unless they
Mhm.
enjoy the winter sports. It's the lakefront and the beach is better during the summer. The Calatrava, all that. So
Yeah, that's what I'm really curious to see, because we are essentially born and bred Florida. I mean, we were born, this sister, Alex, and I were born in Tennessee, but we grew up in Florida. So we are used to hot, humid conditions. There is no season. There are no seasons in Florida. It is just
that's right.
hot.
It's just hot, folks.
It's just hot.
And occasionally, it's also humid.
Yeah. So to see them how they handle colder, like snow,
Yes.
and if they're still traveling during that time of year where inevitably these states are going to be getting some snowfall, how they handle that.
That'll be a whole new adventure for them.
No kidding. Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine.
Yes.
Huh.
What else has been going on in your life?
I got my teeth cleaned.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But you know what? So
Good to know.
This is your reminder, folks. At least once, preferably twice a year, go get your teeth cleaned. They feel so much better. But all jokes aside, so we've been going to this dentist and had the same hygienist for the last 3 years, since beginning of pandemic times. And I go in there today, or not today, last week. And I see my hygienist. She's lovely. Chloe, if you happen to see this, hello.
Chloe?
Yes. And she tells me.
Take your appointment whenever.
Yes. She's wonderful. But I go in and I see she's expecting now. She's expecting a baby boy. And of course, congratulations. Oh my gosh. It's so exciting. We're chatting about all of that. And Kevin and I, we have 2 kids. We've got Grayson and we've got Clara. And there are no plans at the time to have any additional children. So I am like in this phase of like, let me get rid of stuff. Like, let me give things to whomever I can give it to that needs it, especially when it comes to kids. Because when you have kids, it's a lot of stuff that you got to get, at least that's what they tell you. So like she's sitting, I'm laying there, she's cleaning getting started. And I'm like, do you need a crib? She's like, oh no, I've already got one. I got one on Facebook Marketplace. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like going through as she's getting started, like the inventory of things that I have. I'm like, okay, I was like, what about baby clothes? Like clothes. I have, clothes from 0 to 12 months for a boy, if you want it. And like, I'm again, like still scanning in my brain. And all of a sudden, like I hear her say, I register that she's saying something. She's like, oh, well, my sister's going to come actually look at your clothes at the clothes. And I was like, what? My brain like stopped. Like, I was like, have I talked to somebody on Facebook Marketplace? How does she know? I don't remember talking to somebody I'm like, your sister? She's like, yeah. Says her sister's name. Huh? Not ringing any bells whatsoever. She's like, yeah, my sister is so-and-so's husband. I'm pretty sure him and Kevin work together. And again, like my face to watch during this whole interaction must have been hysterical because I am like, my brain is literally like stopping as I'm trying to
shoot me with Novocaine? Like, what's going on?
Yes, I'm like, what is happening right now? And then I realized, oh, yes, we did offer all of this stuff to my husband's coworker who is also expecting this and who happens to be our hygienist's sister. And I was like, what? Huh? She's like, yeah, and she like, then Chloe starts going into like, yeah, they worked together 2 jobs ago for Kevin. And I was like, yeah, wow, she knows a lot of details. Like we talked to her, of course, like when we're in there, but I'm like, wow, she remembers a lot. And I was like, wait a second. We were at the wedding when they got married. So you were at the wedding? She's like, yeah. She's like, I remember seeing you guys. I'm like, how long have you known? How long have you known that we have this connection? And you've just been like sitting on this. She's like, well, HIPAA's a thing. I'm like, oh, this is very true.
That's right. She really honors HIPAA rules.
She did. But now the cat's out of the bag. I, of course, came home and told Kevin, and he was like, what? Huh? And we finally, it was a good reminder for her sister and brother-in-law to come and get the stuff. So they actually came and picked up the clothes. And I'm sure that they will both share them. But oh my gosh, it was my brain was literally, I was like realizing and recognizing, like, oh, wait, like you've known us outside of this hygienist-patient relationship for a minute.
So what's her name again?
Her name is Chloe. We were at her.
Folks, Chloe is the dentist you can trust. So
yes,
keep that in mind.
Absolutely. She's like, I've been trying to figure out how to like subtly mention this. And she's like, because when I first got there and she told me that she was expecting, and she's like, oh yeah, my sister is also expecting. She is due with this, like trying to like drop all of these hints. And I'm like,
yeah. Those are
way too those are not specific enough for me in my brain.
Yes. When you start outside the realm of what the conversation is supposed to be, there's only a few doors back inside at that point. So
oh my god, like it was so funny though.
Well, like, as Ginger ruminates about that, we have the music here. We got to go to a break, but it's a very funny story, and I think it's happened to all of us at some point. So don't feel bad. And you got your teeth.
Oh, no. I did. Go get your teeth
working out. Yeah. Folks, we're going to jump from that. A perfect segue into audiobook narration. Somehow we can make that work. Laura Horowitz is our guest today. We're very excited to talk to her about life as an audiobook narrator. So we'll go to a break. We'll come back. We'll chat with her. And we'll see you on the other side. You're watching Good Story Live.
See you in a minute.
It's called City of Angels, but there's a devil lurking here. This week, 4 girls were murdered in Los Angeles. The last victim isn't like the rest. She wasn't a prostitute or runaway. I knew her, a 19-year-old nanny working for my friend. The poor lass. Her body was found drenched in a pool of blood. By a twist of fate, her diary came into my possession. Its pages have begun to unravel terrible secrets. Secrets someone might kill to protect. Her ex-boyfriend, a bad-tempered, steroid-fueled bodybuilder who was devastated when she dumped him. Her boss, an A-list actress who would do anything to keep her name in the tabloids. The priest, what evil sins might he be hiding that he never confess? Her secret lover, how far will he go to keep the truth from his wife? I'm off to the races. Though I'm hot on the trail, time is running out. Luckily, my fame, my sixth sense has guided me every step of the way. But can I solve this mystery before I become the next victim on the killer's list?
Welcome back, folks. Ginger, we have some exciting things to talk about.
I know. I'm super excited about this guest.
This is new for us. We've never had a guest like this on the program before, right?
No, and this is someone that so we've already told you, it's Laura. I saw Laura on TikTok maybe 2 months ago, something like that. And I was like, ooh, she would be super interesting, and reached out. Fortunately for us and for you all, she responded. And we're going to be talking to her. If you haven't checked her out on TikTok, you definitely should. She, as Jesse mentioned before, is a professional audiobook narrator, and shares life in the booth, I will say, with us on TikTok and Instagram. So
and live from the booth right now is our guest,
Yes.
Laura Horowitz. Laura, how
Here
are
I
you?
am. Oh, I'm great. Everything is good. I am here. I'm live in my booth. So as soon as we're done here, I'll keep recording. I was before and I will be after. So
Now, how big of a booth are we talking here? Are you in like a telephone booth style thing, or how much room do you have to breathe?
I am it's 4 feet wide by 6 feet deep, and I've got a 10-foot ceiling. So it is it's a fabbed booth essentially that we've made inside of my house. So it's inside of a room, inside another room, and then we've built a room inside of that. So yes, I am well insulated.
A room and a room and a room.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes, first and second levels of containment. That's always a good idea for whether you're talking about, pandemics or audiobook narrating. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
let me just read the bio here for you. Laura is a professional audiobook narrator specializing in the fantasy, science fiction, and romance genres.
Mm-hmm.
She's narrated dozens of audiobooks from her home studio in Vancouver, Washington. I've been there. It's a beautiful place. I used to live in Bellevue, but that whole Northwest area, just gorgeous. Everyone should go visit it. She voices characters everywhere between juveniles to seniors, and accents ranging from Cockney to Welsh. That could be a meme or a GIF. From Cockney to Welsh.
Doesn't spread much of an island, since we're still in the UK.
Sure, let's insert that somewhere.
Yeah.
So let's start off by asking, how would you describe what you do each day? What does an audiobook narrator actually do?
All right. So start to finish, my day starts with prepping the book. So we get a manuscript. I guess actually my day starts with auditioning. So it is like any other acting job, you must audition. And I am first and foremost an actor. That is the job description. And so once you have auditioned for a job and you land the job, then it becomes a lot of prep and research. And so the first several days to a week with the manuscript, of course, you must read the manuscript through. That's just, you have to know. I mean, if there's no way of knowing who has a French accent. If it doesn't turn out that they're the villain to chapter 44, then you're in a world of hurt if you've recorded 16 hours of a book that you have no idea what's going to happen at the end. So it's a lot of prep. A lot of us highlight and put notes. I use a PDF reader on my tablet, and so I'm highlighting who's saying what. I'm putting where my breaths are. I'm putting where my accents are. I'm putting where all kinds. So there's a lot of markups on my script as I go into it. And so once I've prepped that, and there's a lot of communication with the authors. If you're working with indie authors, so people who are self-publishing, there's a lot of communication, and especially for people like me who are on TikTok. I get a lot of my authors directly through TikTok, and so we're communicating directly straight out the gate. And so I am getting their feedback. I'm asking for videos of, okay, so this, especially if they're fictitious names or places, I want to know, in your head, how do I say this place? If it doesn't exist in the world, how do you hear it? Because I want to honor exactly as things are written. And so once all of those conversations are set, sometimes you send them a sample, a couple of minutes. They call it the first 15 on various websites, or an extended sample. And so once you send them an extended sample, and it doesn't have to be a literal first 15 minutes of the book. It's just any 15 minutes that has the most juicy dialogue, the most characters, because you just want them to get the most feel out of 15 minutes. You get your main characters, you get good dialogue. If there's, some important, significant scenes that you want to make sure that you're, nailing the way that the author intended, you send that on, and then you're off to the races. You are your own director, unless you're working with a publisher and you have a director with you, which is through Zoom. Then you're your own director. You're producing, you're directing, and all your choices are up to you. And then I finish the book, depending on how long the book is itself. I would say for every one finished hour takes somewhere between 3 and 6 hours of work for every one finished hour of a book. So when you're thinking, okay, it's an 8-hour book, she could do that in one day. No, we cannot. No, we cannot. Now, I don't do any of my own proofing or editing or mastering of my audio files. I do the acting, I do the performance, and then I ship them off. I send those MP3s, or I send them as WAV files off to my proofer, and my goal is as close to a word perfect read as possible. And so they're making sure that any weird noises, because mouths make weird noises, you misread she instead of he, and you say weird funny things, and that's the proofer's job, to make sure all those weird comeuppances are hammered out. You fix them, and then it goes to another third-party person who then edits the files, masters them, so that the file themselves are retail ready, so they can be sold on Audible and go to libraries and all of that.
My goodness. There's so much involved in it. And gosh, how wonderful it is now to have all of these tools to be able to help in the process of, like you said, making sure that you're pronouncing and enunciating things correctly based on the author's creation,
Right.
How did you get started in this whole world of audiobook narrating?
Gotcha. So I started as a reader. I was nothing beyond, I started reading audiobooks when I was in grad school. I do have my master's in writing, and so I do have a writing background. So I do kind of have just a love of literature, a lifelong love of literature. But I started listening to audiobooks in grad school when I couldn't keep up. I was working full time. I was a newlywed, and I just couldn't keep up with my course load. And so I listened to audiobooks in the car to and from work before class at night, and just never stopped. I'm obsessed with audiobooks. I read, I'm the kind of person, I live with this headphone in my ear. And so I get through 2 to 3 to 4, sometimes, 5 audiobooks a week. I devour them because I love them. I love the art of it. I love the storytelling, and I just love literature. I love reading. So after, 500, 600, 700 books listening, I told my husband, I was like, okay, I don't know that I can do it, but at least I know what I don't like, and I know what I do like for narrators. So he bought me a mic a couple of Christmases ago. He bought me just a USB mic that plugs into my computer, and he said, give it a shot. So after years of just fiddling, because it's a commitment, it's a financial investment. There is no quick money in audiobooks. There just isn't, because I told you, if you get a 10-hour book, your first book, it probably takes you 100 hours. By the time you figure out there's software involved, you're having to record your own voice, let alone record it. Then you have to figure out what to do with your files. Like, okay, I have a bunch of files with words on them, and how do I do this? Because you can't afford to hire an editor your first book, most likely. So you're having to figure out how to edit those. What kind of software is free? Do I need to invest in paid software? Do I need Adobe Audition? It's all those things. And that was about 4 years ago when I first just started playing around. I went into a closet and I read a book aloud to my little USB mic.
Right next to the folded up ironing board. And
exactly. Exactly. I had coats and things in my face to kind of dampen the noise. And so I would say I got serious when my daughter was old enough to start going to preschool. That's when you actually have a quiet house, because that's key. That's when I could actually, so about almost 2 years ago is when I got serious and started narrating professionally. Got coaching. I now have I have a coach that helps me with my performance. I have a dialect coach. I have a business coach, and of course I have proofers and editors. So it's a lot. It's a lot of people that you work with. So
we were interviewing an actress out in the Pacific Northwest. She lives in Seattle, named Kimmy Rutledge, a couple of months ago, and she had mentioned her impetus for getting into acting was she watched people do it and said, I think I could do that too, or I think I could do that better. And it's always interesting to me, people who are in the acting realm who challenge what they see and think, I would have tweaked that, I would have done that differently. And that serves as part of the impetus to actually go and do it yourself. I want to ask about the voices that you record for a story. So there's any number of characters. I'm a writer. I've written many characters for my book, and I'm sitting there thinking, wow, it would be very difficult for one voice to cover all that terrain. How do you establish vocal pattern, sound, things that are distinctual for each character? And how do you bounce back and forth so quickly?
So when you're early in your prep period, I do have one sheet that I have every author. If I have access to the author directly, I have them fill out this one sheet. And it's things like, okay, so tell me the basics. How old is this character? Where are they from? This is the time you tell me about their language or their dialect or their accents. And then I also like things like, if you were to cast them in a movie, who do you imagine? Like, do you see Thor or do you see Captain America? You know, like, just give me, it can be character names, it can be actors, but just, I will never sound like Chris Hemsworth, but if that's the feel, if he's like kind of an intense, you know, he's got a big body, I bring that character big in my body. You know, if they're kind of gravelly, then I'm maybe more in my jaw. And so it is a physical job, but it's a physical job that you can't move very much. And so it's more about where I place characters different places in my body. And that sounds like a funny thing to say, but it's like, you know, a meek person, maybe I have more hunch when speaking, like, I'm just not sure, versus someone who's really proud. They sit that, you know, I sit when I narrate. So I sit a little taller, maybe I'm a little bit, my chest is a little bit more up, my neck is a little bit more up. So it's about placements, and I have an idea in my head, but I don't have just kind of like a catalog of voices, because I can't be like, oh, I'm going to use my bubbly girl for Sarah, and I'm going to use my demure girl for, because it's every character. I have so much detail about them. I take my own notes. The author very clearly has a vision for this character, and so my job is to try and execute that as clearly as I can without ever going into caricatures, you know. So it's like, you don't, you know, if you've got kind of a dopey character, you don't play it so dopey that they're like a cartoon. You just kind of, okay, he's a little slower, maybe his pace is a little slower, or he's you know, he's a little bit more, you know, rough around the edges, but you just do your best. And then, you know, my job, like I said, I'll never convince you that I am a man, or I'm using, you know, but my male characters, all I have to do is spark your imagination. You know, you're suspending your disbelief, just like in a movie, just like in any fantasy. You don't think that I leave the booth and then some man has walked in and taken over. I've just sparked your imagination enough for you to go, okay, that's clear who's speaking, and wow, yeah, he's a little rougher around the edges, or whatever he is. So
and as such a consumer of books in general, and I imagine having that one sheet, like you said, you can do so much with your voice and your body, based off of the characteristics of each character. Like you said, kind of shrinking, making you, I mean, I totally understand, though I'm not an actor, but being in your body and making your body feel big if you're, you know, narrating for a character that you feel like is more of a Thor representation, you know? And I imagine now that you've narrated so many books and also read so many books that you probably, do you ever get emotionally attached, you know, to the characters?
Yes. I don't know if you've seen my recent TikToks, but I just did a small series about, especially when you've been with a character or as an author for a series. If I'm working on book 2, 3, 4, and a character that I love dies, or a character that something tragic, oh, absolutely. There is no way to attach yourself so deeply to characters, because my job is to make it feel real. It doesn't matter how fantastical, because I live in a fantasy, you know, my job is predominantly fantasy and romantic fantasy books. And so it doesn't matter how outlandish it is, it needs to feel real. It can't feel silly, or like I'm just kind of, you know, half-assing it. Oh, sorry. You know, I have to.
I think in this case, it's an appropriate term. That's absolutely right. There's so many ways you could take it wrong. I think we've all heard audiobooks where we thought, wow, I wonder why they approached that character that way. And then you hear audiobooks read and certain characters exemplified, whether they're corny or not. And it's like the audiobook narrator knows it, they own it, and they make it so. And because they do that, you believe it too. And I have so much respect for audiobook narrators who can do that, because it's such a fine line that you have to walk.
Yeah, because if you're playing a troll, like you have to sound like a troll, but you don't have to make him sound ridiculous. It just has to be clear that this is a big hulking creature. So
there you go. Now, being an author, I have to ask this on behalf of all authors. What do you think are the unique challenges in working with authors when you're bringing their story to life?
Well, I work with so many indie authors that I often am their very first narrator they've ever worked with, and
Yeah.
so they come in with questions. But I love that. I have no issue with somebody that has no idea of what the process is, because how could you? No, there's no reason to think that this is as involved as it is. There's no reason to think that I have to
Sure.
hire out and submit files to other people, and
That's what I learned, Ginger, when I was working on my project. Like, wow, there's so much I do not know.
Yes.
Sorry, Laura,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No. So I come up with a welcome packet that just goes over, and it's really detailed. And in my first email, I'm like, I hope this is really informational. I really hope it's not overwhelming, because it's pages long, but it has every detail, start to finish. How do they figure out how long their book's going to be? Like, there's no way to just know that inherently. Okay, my book is 80,000 words. How long is that going to be? There's no way to know unless you ask or really Google hard, how many words does the average narrator speak per hour, which is 9,300, by the way. The average narrator speaks 9,300 words. So if you're trying to figure out how long your audiobook is going to be, divide your word count by 9,300, and that will give you a pretty good estimate. I linger somewhere between 9,200 and almost there. Some on the slightly slower end, but still, that's pretty quick. You're still moving. And, we've learned from lots and lots of research and just being part of the APA, which is the Audio Publishers Association. We learned that most listeners speed up their audiobooks regardless. So it doesn't matter. I'm not going to be a speed reader to get up to it. That's why they can mechanically bring up the speed. But back to the question. Working with, I love it. But I love the whole process, so I don't come from the acting background. I had to be trained in that. I come from the literature background. So I want to talk to authors. I want to hear their opinions. I want to hear what their motivation was. I want to know why the characters do what they do. I want to know everything about point of view. I want to know why you chose that. So it's a delight for me. And that may not be the case for every narrator, but most of us, I will say, are on the introverted side, because we are people that like to sit and talk to ourselves in rooms for hours at a time and not see any other humans, so we're on the introverted. So it's not, but I would say it's a friendly introverted community. We all like to talk about books. We all like to talk to authors and publishers, but we're not, in your face people. Not all, I can't speak for all of us, but generally that's the feel is, we don't mind being in booths by ourselves for a couple hours a day, and then going home and drinking a glass of wine and reading some more. That's the kind of people we are. So.
And how wonderful that you can have that role in life and be surrounded and connected with so many people that are of that same kind. Now, another question that came to mind is, how do you determine in this process, like, I'm sure you've been doing this for a while, like you said, about 4 years you got started. How did you determine what style of books and what reads were suited for you? And is it based off of enjoyment, or did you find that you naturally kind of fit in somewhere more than in other places?
Well, I am a predominantly science fiction and fantasy reader. And so I knew that is my end goal. That was my end goal, that is what I wanted to work on. I like epic. I just like anything that's over 20 hours, because I read so much that I don't want a 6-hour book. I want a book that will take me weeks to get to enjoy and like be fully immersed. And so that is my pleasure. I will say my voice does not lend itself to young adult nearly as well as others. I just have, I don't necessarily know that it's a mature voice, but it is just not, I don't do a lot of like college romance. Not that I can't, and I do enjoy it. I do some, but I just have more of a, you have to have like words and your adjectives in your head about how to describe your voice, but it's just, I can do young and I can do happy and bubbly, but I'm more of and I've got a certain intensity or a richness to my voice that just, I do well with, and I enjoy doing a little bit more of, more epic stories. But that also doesn't, my voice, my richness also lends itself great to romance. It just whether it's dark mafia and it's
how did you figure that out,
dark.
Though? Like, did you find that out through trial and error, or was it just, I know instinctively that is not for me?
I had to be told, and it's through hundreds of casting and auditions that you find out, wow, I really get cast for romance. I get cast for fantasy and romance, and they like me in dark romance. They like the heavy stuff. And
your voice has that type of tonality that I think it lends itself to a more tense or a more grave situation, even if it's romantic, even if it's
Yes.
even if
Yes.
it's
So
sensual,
I can
even
do
if it's a fantasy, there is
yes.
something dark or underlying going
Yeah.
on there.
So
And you can
thriller, I do
Yeah.
I do a lot of thriller too. I get cast for them. It's not, but I wasn't a thriller reader, so I didn't feel until I had to get coached in it, because I was like, how do you build suspense when the whole book is tense? How do you keep building without exhausting, without my shoulders being around my, around my ears at the end of the day?
Yeah.
So I had to be coached on it. I had to start listening to it for one more, and then I had to get specialized performance training on how to build suspense and build that edge without falling over it, essentially.
Is there something that you can trick yourself into doing if you're finding that you suddenly don't have a passion for a certain story, or maybe there's certain characters that you just despise reading for whatever reason? How do you keep that motivation going?
In my mind, each character, they are a real person in their own mind, and so
Yes.
like I tell myself and I read that person as if they were real. How would that person actually say this? Like I hate that they're saying this. I hate what, if they're, whatever the subject matter, I
Right.
may hate what they're saying, but they believe it vehemently. Like they know that there's some reason, and so that's all I can believe is they would truly say this. I would never say this. I don't
Right.
want to say this, but I'm not saying this. This character, they feel entitled to this opinion, and I back it as fully as I can. I don't take books I don't agree with. There are
Sure.
very few things that I don't read. Like there are very few triggers that I refuse to do, other than blatant, any kind of book that should not be written, anything that's blatantly bigoted or, racist or anything like that.
Sure.
And I do make sure that my books go through sensitivity readers. If there's any hint, there's a lot of books out there that should have sensitivity readers, and I don't want to be voicing that book if it hasn't. And so I try to make sure that if there's any hint of that as I'm doing my first read through, I'll ask my authors, has this been through a thorough sensitivity read? And if not, then I say, okay, then come back to me, or you may need to find a different narrator. I haven't had almost any circumstances of that, though. So
yeah, you probably get pretty good at knowing which books that you would feel comfortable reading, and just from, I would imagine, a quick read of the synopsis or chapter titles alone sometimes are very revealing. So you have a pseudonym. Obviously, you go by Laura Horowitz, which is your name, and that's, you can be easily found on ACX and Audible and some of the other ones. But you also have a pseudonym named Hayden Hall.
I
and
do.
Tell us the history. How did Hayden Hall come to be?
So the reason that I have a pseudonym, and there's lots of different reasons that authors, narrators, all of us have them. My particular reason was that it is very obvious to me that I read certain types of books, predominantly fantasy, romance, light romance, but fantasy-driven topics, and Hayden Hall reads my dark stuff. Anything on the darker side, anything that needs trigger warnings, anything that has to do with why choose, which is a newer term for what used to be called reverse harem, so anything of a more sexual nature or anything with a darker theme, so mafia romances, anything like that is Hayden's domain. And that is just a clear delineation, not because I am ashamed. I don't read any books I'm ashamed of. If you want my fantasy, go look at Laura Horowitz. She's got fantasy, she's got sci-fi, she's got, there may be romance in it, but if you just like darker themes, I have no qualms with that whatsoever. But go to Hayden. She's got my darker stuff. Go check her out, go read her. That's got the romances, that's the authors. That will also give you a clue to what kind of authors I work with on that side. So it's just at the beginning I thought, no, I do have a young daughter, and I did think, do I want her? Really, it's more her friends. When she gets junior high age, I've got years to go, but when she gets junior high age, will I be embarrassed or ashamed? I never will be. I'm not ashamed of being proud that I'm a woman, or being accepting of sexuality, or reading any LGBTQ plus books. Like I am proud in the books that I do. And I guess my answer is no. Well, if she's embarrassed, we will talk about why these aren't embarrassing things. These themes, these tropes, these ideas, I have no shame about them, and she shouldn't be ashamed. We should be happy that we're opening a world up to your friends. And, if their parents have issues, they can talk to me. We'll deal with that when it comes.
Yes, I love that. And I can imagine that it's also useful. Like, you talk about, you often hear actors talk about being like typecast into certain roles. It helps create that distinction between and show more of your range and create distinct personalities for each of those types, which I can imagine is so helpful.
Yeah. And at some point they can have their own websites, like Hayden can do that. But I don't have to be so clear at this point, because for me the line is clear. But if Hayden is invited to go to like Allure or some book show, then maybe I'd consider doing something like that. But I'm not at this point. It's more just a clear line for myself and for my readers. So
yes. Wonderful. And now here's a question for you again.
Yeah.
Being a narrator of others' audiobooks, if you were to ever write your own novel, would you narrate your own novel? I imagine it's a tough question.
That's a very tough question.
Yeah, I was a reporter. That's the kind of writing I did. So I didn't ever do any of my own fiction. So if I did, like if I wrote, I can imagine writing a children's story for my daughter. That I could probably narrate. If I wrote a YA book with YA characters, probably not. Probably I would cast somebody with a voice. Dual narration is very, very popular right now. That's when you have two different narrators reading the main two different perspectives of the book, and they switch chapter to chapter. That is dual narration. There's also duet narration, and that is actually the two different narrators speaking each line of dialogue. And so that is much more difficult, incredibly challenging in post-production, because that's slicing in every single line of dialogue and then deciding who should read the narration up until the dialogue. That is challenging. And that's left mostly to production houses. Narrators we don't do that ourselves. You have to hire somebody out for that. But anyways, so would I do it? I would probably hire either somebody, depending on the genre. If I write an epic fantasy, maybe I do the female narration, maybe not. That's one thing that you may be too close. I don't know. If I wrote, there's some narrators that are authors and did their own and did beautifully. So that's a maybe. We'll have to see what book I wrote.
Yeah, and I liken it to, I know Jesse and I have had this conversation about narrating your own audiobook, but it's kind of like with anything that you create. It's hard to be the person that then also presents it to the world in that sort of fashion. Or if you've created a piece of software, teaching people how to use it, like it's hard to do. And it's hard to do it well as the creator. So I can imagine that would be hard for sure.
Yeah.
You are a member of the Professional Audiobook Narrators Association, and I was looking into a little bit about what that organization does. Would you share with our viewers why, as an audiobook narrator, it's an advantage to you, and maybe other potential audiobook narrators who've never heard of that would find that as a new reservoir, a new resource?
Yes. So you're referring to PANA, like you said, Professional Audiobook Narrators Association, and it is a new organization. There has been for years and decades now, there has been the Audiobook or the Audio Publishers Association, the APA, and that has been around for decades. However, that represents publishers, not narrators independent of publishers. Yes, we are invited to their events. We get to go to their conferences. So all of it is still hugely beneficial, and we are glad to be included, but we are non-voting members of that association. And so we pay our dues, we go to the conferences, but we don't really impact big decisions. And so a couple of years ago, just this past October, so I guess coming up on 1 year ago, we had some brilliant, very, very successful narrators say, you know what, we need to be able to voice our opinions and actually have action taken based on our opinions. And so Emily Lawrence and Emily Ellett are the two co-founders and co-chairs of the board, of which is now, I think there's hundreds of us. I don't know if there's 1,000 narrators. I don't know. At this point, I don't know. I personally am on the sponsorship committee of PANA, and so I'm actively involved. I help organize all of the Pacific Northwest get-togethers, and I'm on the sponsorship committee because I really believe in a cause that keeps narrators together, that gives us a voice in a world of AI and what we're doing with companies like SpeechKey and that are using purely AI voices to narrate audiobooks. We have to have somebody that voices our opinion in an educated, clear manner, and it's coming from something that is professional, that is nonprofit. So our dues go to fully back into ourselves and then out doing good into the world. And so, and it's also that we have a huge diversity DEI committee, so it's just promoting the right voice for the right book. And that's important to me. It's important to the world that we live in, because I should not be voicing Black characters, not Black voices. I should not be. I can, so it's also education for me. What is appropriate for me to do? When should I just listen? When should I take a stand? What books should I be narrating, and which books should I make sure go to other people and are represented better than they have been in the past? Because in the past, there was no consideration to who the reader was. It was, can they do it? When can they have it done on time? So
yeah,
that's.
Well, you bring up something interesting about AI voices specifically, because when I was looking into this and I was hearing some different auditions for different projects that I'd submitted, one of them I know for sure was submitted from an AI voice, and I was listening to it and I was not aware that it was AI until I very much was.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the hallmarks currently of maybe, the first few seconds, first few minutes, you wouldn't even know, wouldn't be able to tell. But then later there's things where it starts to break down, and there's less, I don't know, the elocution sounds weird after a certain amount of time.
No change in diction when you go from character to narration. Yes.
Yeah,
yes. It can sound human, but there's no clear
Are people actually
emotion.
buying that? I mean, are authors actually listening to this and saying, wow, that sounds better than what a human could do?
No, I would say no, they're not saying that, but they will say, oh, wow, that sounds okay. And it might be less expensive, maybe, so it's a fine line, because I don't think you'll come to any author and they're like, this is better than any narrator could possibly do, because that's not true.
No.
There's no way to get an AI voice to voice characters. They may have different voices, but all they're doing, they're turning up their gain, they're dropping their RMS, like they are doing things mechanically that won't sound emotional, but they will sound different. So no, it's an interesting world, because for the most part, publishers have our back. They won't use like ACX, which is owned by Audible, which is owned by Amazon. They should not allow AI voices. So you getting casting is already, that's like they snuck through, because they know it's very clear they're not allowed to submit auditions on there yet.
So they'll get caught at some point.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We only have a couple of minutes left here, so I wanted to make sure we got this question in right at the end. We always ask the creatives who we invite on the program, what advice would you give to people who are considering becoming, in your case, an audiobook narrator, or thinking, I don't know if my voice is right for it, I don't know if I'd be any good, all the voices in their head that tell them you shouldn't do this. What would you say to them?
If you are passionate about books, predominantly for my job, if you're looking at VO and other corners of voiceover, that's a whole different animal. But if you are interested in audiobooks specifically, this is long form narration. So yes, we are paid per finished hour, but just keep in mind that you can work, especially at the beginning, 6 upwards of 10 hours per finished hour. So make sure that the passion is there, the interest is there. There's not quick money, but if you are interested, do it. It is a fantastic job. If you have the time, if you have the luxury of having some time to get into the business, because you're not going to get books handed to you. Books, you still have to audition, you have to go out, be a go-getter, do it all. But if you're interested, try it. I think it's Scott Brick who has a video on YouTube that says, so you think you want to be an audiobook narrator? That's the video I watched, and I went and sat in a closet, and he said, sit in a closet, read a book of at least 6 hours. Read it aloud. Every time you flub, every time you miss a word, go back, reread the whole sentence over again. And in 10 or 15 hours, when you finish that 6-hour book, go back into the closet and this time put a mic in front of you and try it again. And so after you spent 20 hours completely free, this is all spare time. Nobody's paying you to do this. If you're still interested, do it. It's a wonderful, wonderful job. I am thrilled. I'm a mom. I have a household to take care of. I play soccer. I coach soccer. I have a whole life outside of this, but this is my passion. This is the best job. I worked in Hollywood for years, and I went to press junkets, and I had a very cool career right out of college. But I love this job so much more that it suits me perfectly. So if that sounds like you, do it. It's wonderful. I can encourage, if you have questions, I talk to new narrators all the time. I don't coach personally. I feel I'm way too new to coach, but I am always happy. I do Zoom chats all the time with new narrators, and we talk about what we do, what pitfalls can you overstep, and what things do you just have to do and learn and get through and come out the other side. So yeah,
Ginger, now we know if you're looking for a job where you have pure happiness every day, this
Yeah.
is the one.
This is it.
You know? Yes, as long as you don't mind being hot. That's the only caveat. We're hot in this little hot box. I've got a computer in front of me. I got, computers outside. I'm covered by screens. But as long as you don't mind that, throw your hair in a ponytail and join us. Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah. If you don't mind that, and you don't mind your voice. If you don't, I can imagine
you get over that.
You get over
that.
You do.
Everybody hated
100%.
their voices. When you used to record your voicemail, everybody hated their own voice. But no, after you listen to yourself for 25 hours in one book, you're like, I don't care. I just care how much mouth noise my mouth makes. That's all. I don't care how I sound. I just can't stand the popping of my own mouth. Yeah, so you get over it.
There's only so much pop filters fixed. So
yes.
Then
you start doing anything you can, drinking gallons of water a day to try and stop that popping. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, gosh, I'm like thinking about that now. Just all of the things that you the details that you listen to that are not the actual words when you're going back and proofing your recordings.
You're like, oh, that breath was heinous. Why did I breathe like that? And then you're like, why am I complaining about my own breathing? I had to breathe. But no, you do it.
Yes, absolutely.
Only people in voiceover complain about when they need to breathe. That was a very inappropriate and inconvenient time to take a breath. Laura, thank you so much for being on Good Story Live. It was great to learn all about audiobook narration and your life in particular, how you came to be who you are now and focused on all these. Really, what you're doing is giving a voice to all these great characters and authors who want to see their books kind of come off the page into a new form. It's phenomenal. So thank you for being on the show and for explaining that to our viewers.
Absolutely. Yes. My pleasure. It's been a pleasure, and I love talking books. So you guys just call me anytime. I'll talk about books any day of the week. So
absolutely, and I will make sure that Laura's information is linked down below in the description and on Good Story Live. If you're not following her on TikTok or Instagram, go check it out. She's quite comical.
Not for the faint of heart. I will say.
Yes, good. Yes, it is not for the faint of heart for sure. But super interesting if, again, you love this space. So
if you want behind the scenes of what it's really like to read romance, come join me on TikTok.
Thanks so much, Laura. We'll have you on. We'll have you back on the program again soon.
Love it. All right, guys, take care.
Thank you too.
There you go, Laura Horowitz, aka Hayden Hall. Don't get them mixed up. If you know what kind of book what kind of experience you want, make sure you know what you're going in for. That's great.
I know, it's so interesting too. Yes,
whole different world, and really bringing these worlds to life and the different characters. And again, I said this earlier, I will say it again: the ability to create a unique sound for the protagonist, the antagonist, all the supporting characters, to a significant enough degree that it's identifiable, but not where you're thinking, wow, did someone new walk into this booth and record this book? To still have a consistent sound throughout is really a talent.
Absolutely. I love
go on to Audible or wherever you listen to audiobooks and
look for Laura Horowitz, or depending on which flavor you're preferring, Hayden Hall.
A little more spicy, Hayden Hall. There you go. We know Ginger later is going to be looking up Hayden Hall. That's going to be her thing.
Yep.
There's no denying it. Thanks so much for joining us in Good Story Live. I'm trying to. Next week we're going to have some fun. We're going to have Mark Pickens on the show, who ran a Shakespeare in the Park theater company for
so intrigued.
Many years. And we're going to talk to him about what it was like to do these very complex and wonderfully historical adaptations right in the middle of the outside, open to the elements, and the hackers came to mind. That's not the word I was looking for. The hecklers,
Hecklers.
And just went forward with his team and did this for so long, mostly in the California area. So we're going to have him on next week, and we'll chat about that.
Did you see that? Things are falling.
Ginger's so excited. The whole studio's falling apart.
Oh my gosh.
So join us for that. And, Ginger, great to chat with you again.
Yes. As always, Jesse.
We'll
See you next
week.
time on
All
Good
right.
Story Live.
Bye, folks.